So in this tutorial, you are going to learn how to build JSON decoders with SESI. In the previous class, we built encoders with SESI, and we are able to encode some custom types as well as some primitive types. So we created this author class, and we also created the article class as well, and we created objects of these classes, and we built encoders to actually encode them into the types. We are going to be doing the same thing right now, but we are going to be focusing on this class on building decoders using SESI. So let's go ahead to get started. But before I start, I want you to review this diagram. We are talking about encoding and decoding. We are converting from JSON, implicit JSON, not the JSON literal. We are converting from this JSON here in the middle to instance of the class, right? So we are taking JSON, author JSON or article JSON, and decoding it into author instance or author object or article object. Now the process of parsing JSON literal from a literal string here to JSON here is a different process altogether, and we are going to be talking about it in the next class. So for now, we are going to be creating some JSON from here. We are not going to be using literal strings. We are going to be using it later on after now in the next class. For now, we are going to create JSON and then create a decoder to decode this JSON to instance of author or article. All right, so let's get started. So we have some samples, some authors and articles I've created here. We are going to be testing our decoders to actually decode them. All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a JSON from this one. So I'm actually going to, because these are actually instances. So this is not what we want to do. Let's create JSON by hand. But in case you want to create a JSON from here, you simply create the encoder. So I'm going to say implicit. Just a review of what we did in the previous class. We created a decoder for for the article and author class. In this case, we are going to be doing it for author. So I'm going to say author decoder is equal to, it takes an author and returns a decoder for author. So it's going to be JSON.obj and specify the fields we want to decode one after the other. So it's going to be name. It's going to be decoded as author.name.as JSON, and the second one is bio, is going to be decoded as author.bio.as JSON, and finally the last one is age, is going to be encoded, not decoded, encoded as author, encoded into JSON this way, author.what age.as JSON. All right, so this is fine. So I'm going to add a type annotation for you to recognize that author is actually a type that we are going, the type that we are going to be decoding. So let's see. So we should have IntelliSign that says convert parameter to underscore selection. That I don't understand. So let's add implicit type annotation here. So it's going to be an encoder for what? For author, all right? So this is our encoder. We learned how to do this in the previous class. And so we can have an author JSON at this time. Author JSON is equal to what? So let's put a val here, val. Author JSON will now be let's just convert the first one, author1 dot as JSON, as JSON. Okay, so out of curiosity, I'm just going to print out the JSON author JSON. So I'm going to say print line author JSON. All right. So if I come to save everything, we should have the printout of the author JSON. Now, on my website, this is also done manually, right? So we can simply grab some data like instances of string of the values for each of the field and create the JSON manually. I actually can do it so that we'll do it so that the tutorial is going to be complete. So I'm going to say valid author is equal to, so in this case I'm going to be saying json.object, and again you specify the field, so it's going to be name, and now I'm going to manually specify the field to be kindson dot as JSON, and the second field is going to be bio, and it's going to be lives in Hungary dot as JSON, and finally we should have age is equal to 45, 34 as JSON. All right, so this is a valid author. Maybe we can just create one more that is invalid. So I'm just going to create one more author that is invalid. I'm going to just call it invalid author. All right, so we have two authors now. So let's create article as well. So again, you can create an encoder for article and then use this encoder to convert one of these articles into JSON, right? But you can also do it by hand, by just like this. So in this case, I'll do it by hand. So let me just craft an article at this point. I'll use manually, just like in my website. So I'm going to say valid article. So we are doing this so that we can use this to actually test our decoder to decode into instances of this class. This type annotation sometimes used to be nice, so you can just add them. Okay, so valid article, one valid article is going to be json.object, and the field for the article is going to be ID. So the ID is going to be uuid.random uuid.asJSON. I think I should have that. And the next one is going to be title, and the title is going to be take it or leave it, and I'm going to say as JSON as well. And finally, just not finally yet, content is going to be well, there you go. Okay, docs as JSON, and finally we have a author. We have the author is going to be what? It's going to be valid author dot as JSON. Great. So we have valid article, we have valid author, we have invalid author, and we have the JSON. So let's build a decoder to actually decode these items into the instances of the classes. Now, this is very important for you to understand that there are a number of ways to build decoders. The easiest way, as I mentioned in my website, is to define a decoder is to use the forProductN method of the decoder, where n is the number of fields in the case class. And this method takes the two parameters listed as specified, two parameter lists as specified. I think I have a typo right here. The first parameter specifies a list of fields in the class. The second parameter is a constructor, and for case classes, the constructor is apply. All right. So let's quickly do it. I think this is quite easy. So I'm going to say implicit val author decoder. Author decoder is equal to what? So I'm people forgetting what I'm going to do. So it's going to be the decoder dot forProduct3, because we have, for the author we have three fields. So ID and bio and name. Okay, so this is the first parameter, and then the second parameter, actually I'm going to shift this down so that we can have some readability in our code. So I'm going to now say author.apply. All right. So I don't think this needs any brackets. So why do we have this? Is author decoder is already defined in scope? What do you mean? So this is going to be encoder. Okay. So we have the decoder. So this is our decoder right here. So it's as easy as this. We built a decoder, and this decoder is what we are going to now use to decode the author type. So how do we now use this decoder? We simply call it on the valid author. So how do we do that? We simply say, so I'm going to say decoded author, val decoded author is equal to, there are a number of ways to do it. You can just say author decoder dot as, no, sorry, give me a sec. So let's take a valid author. Actually, this valid author should have been valid author JSON. Just put JSON so that we don't confuse things. So they're actually valid author JSON. That's JSON is still correct. Okay. Valid author JSON. That was JSON. Okay. So let's see. We have valid author JSON dot as and specify author. So what's happening here is we created a decoded author, taking the JSON, remember this diagram, taking the JSON we have here and decoding it into the type. So what we can simply do now, maybe I'm going to take out this two. Let's print out the decoded author. So I'm going to say print line, and I'm going to print out the decoded author. And before I print it out, let me print out the original author. So I'm going to say print line all valid author JSON, and after that I'm printing out the decoded author. Okay, so I'm going to save everything, and let's see what we have. So the original printout here is the original JSON, right? So you can see the JSON, and the decoded author gives us a decoding failure. So we have a decoding failure in trying to decode the author. So let's try to see what the problem is. So so let's say we are trying to decode valid author JSON. So this is valid author JSON, Kyneton H. Let's see. So author decoder. So you can see that our decoder we have a problem here. Actually is supposed to be name and not ID. So it tells us the failure that occurred. As you can see, attempted to decode a value, list downfield ID. So I'm just going to change it to name. All right. So at this point, I expect the decode to have a successful decode. So I'm going to just print it out by saving everything. So it says left decoding failure int list downfield name. So we also had the same mistake. So in this case, we have, I think we should have age here. So these are some of the things that you need to get used to when you are building, working with encoders and decoders. So at this point, it should work. What you can see here is that we are having a result that tells us what the problem is. And that is the benefit of this decoder we use, which is called applicative-based decoder. We are going to be building a decoder using a monadic decoder after now. Later on in a different tutorial, I'm going to be explaining to you the meaning of all these terms. So let's save everything and let's see what we have. So at this point, we have the JSON and we have the decoded value, right? So this is an instance of an author class that we have here. Okay, so I'd like you to play around to build decoder for article. However, we are going to continue in the next class to build more decoders and explain some of the terms, because we still have how to use the decoder using the H cursor and using the as method. The as method is what we just used. We'll talk about decoder accumulating method and also using the for comprehension to build a monadic decoder. So stay with me in the next part as we are going to continue building decoders. I would like to thank you for viewing. If you have challenges whatsoever, please do leave me a comment in the comment box below. And please subscribe to my channel if it's been informative for you. I remain Kindson the Tech Pro, and we see you in the next part.